Hi there, my name is Fluffy Bear, and part of the content I want to make on this channel is commentary videos. You know, maybe talking about an obscure movie I found, maybe a bad movie, or a not too serious review of something that came out recently, or something along those lines. But, you see, there's just one problem with that. I have terrible taste. I just seem to enjoy movies and music and other things that gets a lot of hate from people on the internet. Yeah, it's been something I've been coming to terms with for a while now, and I should probably just admit to that. So I figured I'd make a video talking about some of the stuff I like that generally isn't very well appreciated, so to speak. I always kind of had a hint that I liked trash growing up, but it didn't really set in until I heard more and more about certain media that I loved as a kid. A big one that settled this was the 2003 live-action Cat in the Hat movie. Yes, that one. Growing up, my family and I loved this movie. We thought it was hilarious and cherished it, just thinking it was a fun family movie. However, one day I was watching the Game Grumps when I saw they made a video on the Cat in the Hat video game. And in that video, they started talking about how absolutely terrible the movie was. While I've heard media that I like it shit on in the past, this time it felt different. Because it wasn't like they were saying they simply disliked it. They talked about it as if everyone unanimously agreed that it was terrible. Probably because they did. I didn't fully believe it until they mentioned the frickin' Rotten Tomatoes rating, and the fact that this movie was the sole reason they stopped making live-action Dr. Seuss movies. At the time, I actually hadn't watched the movie since I was a kid, but I've watched it again since then, and I still like it, and I'm still fond of it to this day. I generally think plenty of the bits in the movie are funny. I still occasionally quote it to this day, and it even influenced some of my comedy. Although, I can definitely agree that some parts of it haven't aged well, visually speaking and otherwise. But I'll still always have a special place in my heart for this movie, even if I know it isn't seen as particularly good. As well, a big property that I've heard a lot of flack for is the popular TV show Friends. Personally, I love the show, and there was even a time period when I fell asleep to it every night. I've almost definitely watched every episode like 20 times by now. That may sound like hell to others though, because Friends is typically seen as an example of sitcoms just not being funny. I've heard many a joke about how people hate Friends and can't sit through it. Not to mention there's the whole debate on canned laughter being bad for comedy and whatnot, with Friends being seen as a prime example. There was even a clip that went viral where someone edited out the laughter to prove how quote-unquote unfunny it was. But once again, my family and I love this show and reference it every now and again as well.
It's white, paper, snow, a ghost!
On the subject of comedy, a particular person I've seen plenty of people shit on, especially more recently, is Jeff Dunham. Needless to say, I like Jeff. I was shown his specials as a kid and I thought he was absolutely hilarious, even if I didn't get a third of the jokes because, you know, I was like 9. To be fair about this one though, a lot of people criticize his characters that are built on stereotypes of races, mainly Ahmed, Jose Jalapeno, and Sweet Daddy D. Jesus Christ, I can't even say that name with a straight face. Now, sure, that last one is pretty, you know, yikes, looking back on it, and I myself am not black, so I guess I can't say a whole lot on him, but I am Mexican, and honestly, I'm in the camp that doesn't care that much about jokes made towards Mexicans. I, for one, love Jose, and so do plenty of my friends and family. Although, again, to be fair, Mexicans are kind of notorious for not giving a shit about racist comedy made about them, and hell, even participate in it sometimes, so I guess that isn't too surprising. As for Ahmed, it is a bit of a weird area. You may have heard that Jeff Dunham is really big in the Middle East, but I'm not even sure Jeff himself even understands why.
So you and I are apparently the most popular comedians in the Middle East. Now, I understand me. I have a dead terrorist in my suitcase, Ahmed the dead terrorist. So they love that guy because they think he's one of them.
For Ahmed, there are kind of two camps of people. Those who saw Ahmed as a representation of the terrorists we were at war with for, you know, ever, and those who saw Ahmed as a joke on all Middle Eastern folk. And yeah, I definitely get the problems people have with the second camp, but I think as long as you view him in the eyes of the first camp, Ahmed is still an enjoyable joke and is probably the real reason Jeff was so popular in the Middle East. Anyway, let's pivot to something else, like music. As for music I loved growing up, pop punk was a huge genre for me. Artists like Paramore, Green Day, Avril Lavigne, hell, two of my favorite bands were Good Charlotte and Simple Plan, both of which I've listened to just about every song of, at least the ones available on Spotify. So imagine my surprise when I started hearing a lot of hate thrown all of their way as a teenager. Even after I'd kind of moved on past them and fallen in love with EDM as a teen, I still loved and admired this style of music, so it was a hell of a surprise to hear people shit on them, including creators I respected like Todd in the Shadows and Anthony Fantano. Hell, Todd supposedly hated Simple Plan so much that he started his original blog just to complain about pop music because of them. Still, I have a deep appreciation for this style of music, and after I stopped listening to EDM as much, I fell back in love with these bands and even checked out more of their music than I had when I was a kid, and I even started listening to more pop-punk bands that I didn't even know any music from beforehand. Next on the line of music, I mentioned how I started to love EDM in my teenage years, and yeah, you guessed it, that's another thing that I've since heard a lot of hate for, especially in retrospect as it has since fallen out of popularity. My cousin Pedro is who properly introduced me into EDM by showing me Skrillex, which is funny because Pedro was and still very much is a huge metalhead. That's like the main genre of music he listens to. So it's very funny to me that he, of all people, is who got me into EDM and dubstep. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people say dubstep and EDM in general is trash, which I obviously don't agree with. I mentioned earlier that I stopped listening to a whole lot of EDM after a while, but I've recently started listening to it again, and I remembered just why I fell in love with it as a teen, and even if it isn't for most people, I'm gonna enjoy it all the same. Some bands in particular include Dance Gavin Dance, who I love but apparently are seen more of as a guilty pleasure band. I obviously disagree, but then again, there's a reason I'm making this video in the first place. The Jonas Brothers, yeah, I know, very different from the previous examples, but I love them all the same. This one is largely nostalgia, but I still think they have some bangers. Skillet, who I haven't heard too many songs of, but I still think are a good band while others obviously disagree. And the last one being Rings of Saturn, a super intense alien core / technical deathcore band that is generally shitted on, especially in the clone hero community, but I personally just love how over the top and in your face they are. Seriously, if you want to check them out, prepare yourself, even if you do like metal. Anyway, let's move on to video games. Growing up, one of my cousins had a GameCube and showed me a couple of Sonic games, and I fell in love with the franchise. Unfortunately, that family actually moved back to Mexico a short while later, and I didn't really have any Sonic games to play myself. So I mostly interacted with the fandom via YouTube and Flash games, and just watched Sonic X whenever I could. I would later get Sonic Unleashed of all the Sonic games to get, and only really had that game to play from the franchise while growing up. Still, I loved Sonic, and would spend so much of my time just looking stuff up about the series whenever I could, which made it suck all the more when I grew up and started seeing Sonic become way more of a cultural punching bag by most of the internet, especially the fandom, which was a big part of my younger life. Needless to say, I'm very glad after the Sonic movies came out, everyone slowly started treating the franchise better. Not perfectly, but better. Side note, but I mentioned I had Sonic Unleashed, which is a generally panned game, even for Sonic, but I actually like it and think it's plenty of fun. I was super sad when my 360 broke and I couldn't play the game anymore, and even sadder when I got the game for Wii a few years later and realized just how much they messed up the Wii port of that game. Alright, what else is there? I had Crash Tag Team Racing growing up. I actually didn't know Crash was a beloved franchise until like 2016, and I also didn't know Crash fans typically hated tag team racing specifically. My excuse here is I just never played the original Crash games. Next, I also really liked Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. Once again, I didn't play the original game, so I'm giving myself a pass here. I've seen a lot of hate for the game Changed on Twitter. My boyfriend loves it, and I like what little I've played of it, even if it is a little fetishy at times. Also, the difficulty can definitely use some tweaking, but still, I generally love what I've played of it. Some people didn't like the gameplay to Cult of the Lamb. I haven't played too many roguelikes, so I personally enjoyed it. I was obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's for a while. Then again, I was 13 when that happened. What else? Oh yeah, I'm a furry. Furries have kind of been a cultural punching bag of the internet for a super long time, and have only recently been more accepted, if I could even use that word. Yeah, I even made fun of my own friend when he first told me he was a furry in like the 8th grade, which made it all the funnier when I started realizing a few years later that, hey, all of the stuff in my feed is furry stuff, and I don't quite hate that. As well, a while back, the creator of the Webtoon comic Boyfriends had a campaign of people trying to cancel him. I don't particularly want to touch on that, but of course, there was a bunch of people saying that they had always hated the comic and that it was terrible and whatnot. Personally, I love it. As a man who, you know, likes other men, I think it's great. I had it recommended to me by 2 separate gay guys and was certainly not disappointed by it. It's cute, it's funny, it makes me feel things for a bunch of pixels. The creator did his job right. In a similar vein, I've seen a bunch of people, once again on Twitter, shit on Helluva Boss and Hazbin Hotel, 2 shows created by VivziePop. I always knew I would like them, and recently I was finally pushed by my boyfriend to actually check them out, and yeah, I loved them. Of course, I get the criticism. Helluva Boss certainly wants you to know it's not a cartoon for kids, sometimes an excessive amount. Once you look past those parts when they happen, the rest of the show is great. It's funny, it's cute at times, and it did the thing where it made me like a character I hated at first. It's a pretty damn good show in my book, even if they do say fuck every other sentence. As a side note, I didn't actually know Hazbin Hotel was literally just a pilot episode and a music video. I was so damn confused about it at first, but I'm definitely excited for it to release now. Okay, I think that's enough for you to get the point. I like some truly trashy things that a lot of people hate, and said people are probably gonna lose some of their respect for me over it. But you know what? Even if the games and music and shows I like are indeed trash, they're my trash, damn it, and I'm gonna enjoy them all the same like I'm a goddamn raccoon having the time of their life. Because I'm sure everyone has at least one show or game or band that they're at least a little bit ashamed of to enjoy. Whether it's a big critic or random internet users, we all have our trash that we love at the end of the day. Some that even I would be truly insulted by if they were to tell me about it. And you also know what? That's okay. Fuck this guilty pleasure shit. Just enjoy what you enjoy, because opinions are just that. Opinions. No one opinion is correct, and I have my own, just like you have your own. And if I shit on something you enjoy, just take a look at all the garbage I love and take solace in that, because no one is immune. Everyone has their trash. And this, sir, or madam, or another equivalent gender-neutral term, this has been mine. Anyway, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you appreciate my bold honesty and would like to see more from me. And also, leave a comment. The algorithm likes it when you do that. If you want to support me directly, there's a link to my Ko-fi in the description. I'll give you a shout out in the next video if you do. And with that, I'll be leaving you. See you in the next video. Hopefully.